They cornered the Deathworld girl after class. The security cameras exploded. Part 2. 2 meters. Ren Vishari stood close enough that Megan could see the bioluminescent veins beneath his skin shifting from violet to deep indigo. In Torvathi body language, that color meant authority, certainty, a creature that had already decided the outcome and was now just performing the steps. Your scholarship, he said, was meant for a student of civilization, not a specimen from a death-rated rock. He let the word specimen land the way someone drops a glass on purpose, controlled, watching for the flinch. Megan did not flinch. She had been called worse by people who meant it more. She stood with her bag on her shoulder and her weight centered, and she counted things. Camera, 1. Overhead, 2.4 meters up. Model VK40. Recording buffer 45 seconds before continuous upload. Composite casing, rated at 12 joules of impact resistance. Exits, 2. Both blocked. Ren and the twins ahead. Shadrick behind. Ren kept talking. His voice had the polish of someone who had practiced cruelty in front of a mirror until it looked like concern. The Academy has standards, Megan. Cultural standards. Intellectual standards. You must understand that your presence here creates a certain discomfort among the student body. Behind her, Shadrick laughed. It sounded like someone stepping on gravel. The Delvari twins, Pex and Neil, stood flanking wide. They were identical in the way that made it hard to tell if they were two people or one person in two places. Gray skin, 6 fingers each. Eyes that tracked Megan with the careful attention of animals that had been told to watch but not to think. Ren tilted his head. I am offering you a kindness. Withdraw from the Academy. Return to your world. No formal complaint. No record. You simply leave. Period. Megan looked at him. She had heard this speech before. Different words, same bones underneath. The structure of it was as old as any predator, cornering any smaller thing and explaining why this was really for everyone's good. In Gary, the speech had come from people with less impressive skin and worse vocabulary, but the geometry was identical. The semicircle, the blocked exits, the one doing the talking while the others waited for permission. She said nothing. Ren's veins shifted again, a flicker of something brighter, impatience. You do not speak? I am listening, Megan said. Her voice was flat, not because she was controlling it, because the part of her brain that managed tone had gone somewhere else, somewhere behind her eyes, and was doing calculations that had nothing to do with words. Then listen carefully. Ren stepped forward. 1 meter now. He raised his hand and reached for her shoulder. In Torvathi culture, gripping the shoulder was dominance. It forced the other person into a lower posture. It said, I am above you, and you will feel it in your body. His hand made contact. It landed on her shoulder. Long fingers, strong by Torvathi standards. He pressed down. Megan did not go down. Ren pressed harder. His veins flickered. Confusion. He was pressing with a force that would buckle a Delvari to their knees, and the human girl was standing exactly where she had been standing, and his hand might as well have been resting on a concrete post. Megan's eyes were on his hand. Not on his face. His hand. The fingers wrapped over her shoulder. The pressure against her collarbone. The weight of someone else's grip holding her in place. Something old woke up. She did not decide what happened next. Her body made choices, and her mind watched from a place that was quiet and far away and very, very fast. She took Ren's wrist, redirected, stepped through his reach. Her hip was against his hip, and then it was not, and Ren was traveling sideways into the corridor wall. The sound was not dramatic, dense. A textbook dropped on tile. His bioluminescent veins flared white, every one of them at once, and he made a noise that was half gasp and half click. A sound his species made when their bodies registered something their minds had not caught up to yet. Chadrick moved, fast. Grothians were built low and heavy, and they could close distance in a way that surprised people who thought compact meant slow. He lunged at Megan from behind, arms wide, going for a grab. Megan pivoted. The movement was not graceful. It was not martial arts. It was ugly and efficient in the way a thing is efficient when it was learned on concrete, in rooms without mats, from situations where style meant nothing, and the only grade was whether you were still standing at the end. Her elbow met Chadrick's jaw. His scales cracked. Not broke, cracked. A sound like a knuckle popping, but louder. Chadrick hit the floor, and his scales left a white scrape on the composite. The Delvari twins did not move. They had watched Ren hit the wall. They had watched Chadrick hit the floor. They performed the fastest risk assessment of their lives, and arrived at the same conclusion at the same time. No. 3 seconds, maybe 4. The whole thing had taken less time than a long breath. Megan stood in the center of the hallway, breathing hard. Not from effort. Her body could have done this twice more, without tiring. She was breathing hard because behind her eyes the old engine was running, the one that started when someone grabbed her and did not let go, and it was pumping heat through her blood and sharpening the edges of the world until everything was too bright and too loud and too close. Her pens. Her bag had slipped during the pivot, and her pencil case had opened, and her pens were rolling across the hallway floor in 6 different directions. Blue ones, black ones, the red one she liked, with the grip that did not slip when her hands got sweaty. She stared at the pens. Her mind locked onto them with an intensity that had nothing to do with pens, and everything to do with the fact that if she looked at anything else right now, she would be back in a room in Gary with a hand on her shoulder and the door locked. And she was not there. She was here. She was on a space station 4,000 light-years from that room, and these were her pens, and they were rolling away. She looked up at the camera. The camera exploded. Not fire, not sparks. A sharp, hard pop, like a light bulb crushed in a fist. The composite casing cracked outward from the center. The lens shattered into pieces too small to be called shards. Components rained down onto the hallway floor and scattered among the pens. Megan stared at the debris. Her hand was raised. She did not remember raising it. Ren was pressed against the wall, his veins pulsing in colors that his species had no cultural reference for, because no Torvathi had ever felt what he was feeling right now. Chadrick was on the floor, one hand on his cracked jaw, not trying to get up. The twins had backed up so far they were nearly at the junction. Megan lowered her hand. She looked at Ren, looked at Chadrick, looked at the twins. Nobody moved. Megan bent down and picked up her pens, one by one. Blue, black, black, blue, the red one with the good grip. She put them back in the pencil case and zipped it shut and put it in her bag. The bag strap was torn. She noticed this the way someone notices a crack in a sidewalk. A fact, not a feeling. She put the bag on her shoulder. She walked 40 meters to her quarters. She covered them at a pace that was not fast and not slow. She did not look back. Running was a thing Prey did, and whatever Megan was in this moment, it was not that. Her door opened. She stepped inside. It closed behind her. She sat on her bunk. The room was small and clean, and hers. She stared at her hands, turned them over, palms up, palms down, opened her fingers, closed them. They looked normal. Same hands, same short nails she kept trimmed, because long nails broke when you made a fist. Same scar on the left index finger from a kitchen accident when she was 12. Same hands. They had destroyed a camera from 2 meters away without touching it. She had not done that since Gary. She had not known she could still do it. Megan sat on her bunk in her small room on a space station at the edge of Union territory, and she held her hands in her lap, and she did not move for a very long time. Outside in hallway 9, the pieces of the camera lay among pen marks on the floor. Blue ink, black ink, a single red line where the good pen had rolled the farthest. Nobody came to clean it up for hours. Nobody wanted to walk down that hallway. Not yet. They cornered the Deathworld girl after class. The security cameras exploded. Part 3. The chair in the administrative wing was built for Torvathi proportions. Megan sat in it with her feet 3 inches off the floor, which made her feel 9 years old, which made her angry, which was better than the other things she could feel right now. So she let the anger sit in her chest like a warm coal, and she waited. Dean Orathi's office was large and white and clean in the way that powerful people's offices were always clean, as if mess was something that only happened to people who could not afford to make it disappear. The dean himself was Vanar, the species that had founded the academy 600 years ago. Tall, thin, skin so pale it was nearly translucent, and beneath it a network of something that was not veins, but looked like light moving through water. When he spoke, his voice had a quality like wind passing through pipes. Deliberate. He was not speaking yet. He was reading a screen. Megan hooked her heels on the chair rung and made herself still. To her left sat Ren Vashari. His veins were a controlled, steady blue. Diplomatic blue. He had a bruise on his shoulder from where he had met the wall, hidden beneath his uniform. His posture was perfect, and his expression was the kind of calm that took money and breeding and generations of practice to fake this well. To Megan's right sat a woman she had not met before. Human, early 30s, dark hair cut short and practical. She wore a faculty badge that read Counselor Lynn Cody, Xenopsychology Fellow. She sat with her hands folded and her back straight, and she watched the room the way Megan watched rooms. Megan noticed this, noticed the eyes tracking exits, tracking faces, tracking the small shifts in posture that told you what someone was going to do before they did it. Which was how she knew Lynn might be someone worth paying attention to. Megan's trust instincts had been broken a long time ago. The things that felt safe were usually the most dangerous, and the people who made her uneasy were the ones who had actually earned their edges. Dean Orathi looked up from his screen. I have reviewed the security footage from hallway 9. He pressed a control. A holographic display opened above his desk. The footage played. Megan watched herself on camera. A small figure walking down a corridor. 4 larger figures stepping into position around her. The geometry of the trap, clean and obvious from the overhead angle. Ren reaching. Contact. Then static. 14 seconds of gray noise where the image should have been. The feed cut to hash, and stayed there, and then resumed. And in the resumed image, Ren was against the wall, and Chadrick was on the floor, and the camera that had been recording was now in pieces, and Megan was walking away with a torn bag strap. 14 seconds. Everything that mattered had happened inside them, and the only witness was now scattered across hallway 9 in fragments too small to reassemble. Megan, Dean Orathi said, can you describe what occurred during the gap in the footage? I defended myself, she said, against 4 students. Yes, successfully. They are here. I am here. You can check the medical reports for who needed treatment and who did not. Ren's veins flickered. A pulse of something hot and violet, gone as fast as it came. Dean Orathi did not look at him. The camera, the dean said. Security has examined the remains. The failure pattern is inconsistent with standard malfunction. Do you have an explanation? No, Megan said. This was not a lie. She did not have an explanation. She had a memory of her hand being raised, and a sound like a fist closing around a light bulb, and then debris on the floor. But memory and explanation were different things, and she was not going to give them a thing she did not have. Ren spoke. Dean Orathi, with respect, this incident is clear. The human student assaulted 4 members of the student body in a corridor and destroyed academy property. Her scholarship should be reviewed immediately. My family, your family's position on the Cultural Preservation Council is noted in your file, Ren. As is the fact that you and 3 other students positioned yourselves in a corridor to block a lone student's path to her quarters during a low-traffic hour. Dean Orathi's voice did not change. It did not need to. That is also clear. Ren's mouth closed. The hearing continued. Chadrix delivered via written account because his jaw was still being treated. The twins, which were nearly identical and carefully empty of useful detail. Ren's, which was polished and structured and full of words like concern and community standards and the well-being of the student body. Megan's statement was 4 sentences long. She gave it once and did not add to it. The outcome came 40 minutes later. Inconclusive. No expulsion for either party. Megan was placed on behavioral observation, which meant someone would be checking in on her at regular intervals to make sure she was not a danger. Ren was issued a cultural sensitivity reminder, which was a formal document that went into his file and did absolutely nothing. His family's name was on a building. Formal documents meant what the people behind them decided they meant. Megan knew how this worked. She had sat in offices before. Same furniture arranged in the same way to make the same point. The institution is bigger than you, and the institution has already decided what happened, and your job is to sit in the chair and let the decision move through its steps. She left the dean's office. The corridor outside was empty. Her feet touched the floor out here. She was on her own ground again, such as it was. Megan. Lynn Cody was behind her, walking at a pace that said she was following, but not chasing. Her hands were in her pockets, and her face was neutral. Can I walk with you? Megan did not say yes. She did not say no. She kept walking, and Lynn fell in beside her, and they moved through the corridor in a silence that was not comfortable, but was at least honest. 3 junctions passed before Lynn spoke. You check the exits before you sit down. Megan did not respond. Every room, the lecture hall, the dining hall, the dean's office. You check the exits, you pick your seat based on sightlines, and you keep your back to a wall. You have been doing it since your first day. Is there a question in there? No, Lynn said, just an observation. They walked. Lynn did not ask about the fight, did not ask about the camera, did not ask Megan how she was feeling, which was the question people asked when they wanted you to perform an emotion for their comfort. They reached Megan's corridor. Lynn stopped. I eat lunch at 11:30 in the dining hall. East side, table by the window. There is room. Megan looked at her, looked for the angle, looked for the play. Lynn Cody stood in the corridor with her hands in her pockets and her face open and her eyes that tracked rooms the same way Megan's did. And Megan could not find the angle because sometimes, rarely, there was no angle. Sometimes, someone just knew what a locked door sounded like from the inside because they had heard it too. Maybe, Megan said. Lynn nodded, walked away, did not look back. Megan went to her quarters, sat on her bunk. The room was quiet. Her bag was on the floor with the torn strap, and inside it, her pens were lined up in their case, undisturbed, accounted for. Safe. Her terminal chimed. A message. No sender ID. The text was in Torvathi script, the formal dialect that Ren's class used among themselves, the dialect that was designed to sound beautiful while delivering threats. She ran it through her translator. 3 words appeared on the screen, in plain English. We are not finished. Megan read it twice. Her hands were still. Her breathing was even. The coal of anger in her chest had not gone out. It had gotten quieter, which was different from smaller. She deleted the message. She opened her terminal's academic portal and pulled up her xenobiology textbook. Chapter 9. Apex predator behavioral patterns in territorial species. Subsection 3. Escalation behaviors following failed dominance displays. She read the subsection heading and almost smiled. Almost. She started taking notes. Detailed ones. The kind of notes a student takes when they are studying for an exam. The kind of notes a student takes when the exam is not academic. Outside her door, the corridor was empty. Hallway 9 had been cleaned. The camera had been replaced. The new one was the same model as the old one. Same composite casing. Same 12-joule impact rating. The station hummed around her, and Megan Hale read about predators, and she did not sleep for a long time. They cornered the Deathworld girl after class. The security cameras exploded. Part 4. Instructor Soleth held the piece of camera casing between two of his 4 hands and turned it under the lab light. The fragment was small, about the size of a Delvari fingertip. It had been part of the outer shell, the section that faced the hallway, and it was bent outward in a curve that was wrong. Wrong in a specific way. Wrong in a way that Soleth had spent 3 hours confirming was not his imagination. Standard camera failures, power surges, component fatigue, impact damage, produced characteristic patterns. Soleth had reviewed 17 technical manuals. A power surge melted internal wiring and left scorch marks. Component fatigue created fracture lines along material stress points. Impact damage cracked inward, toward the source of force. This casing was bent outward, away from the camera's interior. But the force analysis did not match an internal explosion either. The pressure wave had originated from a point approximately 1.4 meters in front of the camera. External, directed, focused. A pulse of kinetic energy that had struck the casing, overwhelmed its 12-joule rating in a fraction of a second, and shattered it. Soleth ran the analysis a 4th time. The results did not change. He set the fragment down, folded all 4 hands on the lab bench. His head tilted to the left, then to the right, the Cathari equivalent of pacing in a small room. The camera had been destroyed by a directed kinetic pulse from a biological source. There had been 5 biological sources in that hallway. 4 Torvathi, Delvari, and Grothian students, none of whose species possessed any documented capacity for kinetic energy projection. And 1 human. Soleth opened the Union's central academic database and entered a search query. Homo sapiens, Deathworld origin, anomalous capability reports. The database returned 4,312 results. He refined. Verified incidents, restricted clearance. The number dropped to 340. He refined again. Kinetic, psychokinetic, or biokinetic phenomena. 89 results, 61 of which were sealed by Union security. He read the 28 that were not sealed. A cargo loader on Waystation Theta. Human, female, 26 years old. During a hull breach that killed 3 crew members, she had gripped a pressure door that had jammed on its rail and forced it closed. The door required 900 newtons of force to move under normal conditions. The rail was bent. Post-incident analysis estimated she had applied over 3,000 newtons. The loader weighed 58 kilograms. The reviewing officer's note read, "Subject was under extreme duress. Strength output inconsistent with body mass. Not reproducible under controlled conditions." A Marine on a peacekeeping deployment. Human. Male. 22. Under sustained weapons fire from a Grothian militia, he had crossed 14 meters of open ground in 1.1 seconds. His species' documented maximum sprint speed would have required 1.9 seconds. The reviewing officer's note was shorter. Anomalous. Filed. A child on a colony world. Human. Female. 7 years old. During a predator attack on her family's settlement, she had screamed. The predator, a Class 6 rated carnivore with armored ear canals, suffered bilateral eardrum rupture. The sound pressure level recorded by a nearby environmental monitor exceeded 140 decibels. A human child's vocal output should peak at approximately 100. The reviewing officer had not left a note on that one. Just a single word in the margin of the report. How? Soleth sat in his lab. The station hummed around him. Outside the window, the stars were steady and uncaring. He had been teaching xenobiology for 31 years. He had studied predators on 40 worlds. He understood apex adaptation, survival pressure, evolutionary arms races. He understood that Deathworlds produced harder organisms because only the hard survived. But this was different. The things in these files were not about hardness, not about bone density, or muscle fiber, or immune response. Those were measurable, documented, filed under expected Deathworld adaptation, and used to justify the extra thick furniture in human quarters. What Soleth was reading was something else. Something that happened when the measurable things were not enough, when the body's documented limits hit a wall, and the organism needed more. And got it. From where? The files did not say. The science did not say. The 28 unsealed reports shared only one common thread. Subject was under extreme duress. Effect was not reproducible under controlled conditions. The organism needed more, and it got more, but only when it was desperate. Soleth thought about Megan Hale sitting in his lecture hall, third seat from the left, back row, never raising her hand. He thought about the way she watched doors, the way she moved through corridors, with the precise, energy-efficient gait of something that had learned to conserve, because waste was a luxury, and luxury was for species that did not live on worlds that were trying to kill them. He thought about a 17-year-old girl standing in a hallway with 4 aliens who outweighed her and outreached her and outnumbered her, and the camera exploding. He opened his personal journal, the one no one else read. He wrote one entry. The girl from the Deathworld is not what we were afraid of. She is what we did not know to be afraid of. There is a difference. I am not yet sure it matters. He closed the journal. He went back to reading the files. 3 levels above Soleth's lab, the social architecture of the Academy was doing what social architecture does when power is threatened. It was closing ranks. Ren Vishari did not corner Megan again. He did not need to. He had something more effective than his fists and his 4 allies and his hallway ambush. He had his name. His mother sat on the Union's Cultural Preservation Council. His family funded the East Wing of the Academy Library. His species had been part of galactic civilization for 9,000 years, which was 8,000 years longer than humanity had known the galaxy existed. He made calls, quiet ones, a word to a friend, a mention at a social gathering, a casual observation, repeated just often enough to become consensus. The human girl was dangerous. A Deathworld animal wearing a student uniform. Megan noticed the effects, the way you notice a temperature drop. Not all at once, in pieces. Her lab partner in xenochemistry requested a reassignment. The request was approved within an hour. Her table in the dining hall, already isolated, acquired an extra radius of empty seats around it, as if her solitude had its own gravity. A Grothian student she had never spoken to, younger than Chadrick, a first-year named Tev, spat on the floor as she passed in the corridor. Not at her, near her. Close enough to be a message, far enough to be deniable. Megan did not react. Tev was an amateur. She had been spat at by professionals. In Gary, the professionals did not spit near you, they spit on you. And they did it in front of an audience, because the point was not the spit, the point was seeing whether you would flinch, and the answer to that question determined what came next. Megan did not flinch. She went to class. She ate alone. She studied. Lynn Cody began appearing. Not dramatically. Not with speeches or confrontations or visible alliance. Lynn was too smart for that. She appeared the way a wall appears when you lean back and discover something solid behind you. She ate at the table by the window at 11:30 and left a chair open. Megan sat in it on the 4th day. They did not talk much. Lynn asked about coursework. Megan gave short answers. They ate in a silence that was not friendship yet, but was something adjacent to it. Something that had the same shape, and might fill in with time. Lynn walked the same corridors, showed up in the same junctions, made herself visible in the spaces around Megan, not as a guard, but as a witness. Someone the Academy could not easily discard. A faculty member, human, present. Megan did not thank her. Lynn did not expect thanks. They developed an understanding that lived below words. 2 weeks after the hallway incident, Instructor Soleth sent Megan a message requesting a meeting. Academic purpose, her coursework performance. She went to his lab after hours. Soleth stood among his specimen displays and his data screens, 4 arms folded in the resting position that meant he was thinking carefully. He asked her about her coursework. She answered precisely. He asked about apex predator adaptation. She answered fluently, with the kind of depth that told him she was not just studying the material, but living inside it. Then he asked, in human biology, what happens when the adrenaline cascade exceeds documented parameters? Megan went still. Not the strategic stillness she used in classrooms and corridors. A different kind. Deeper. Like a door had been opened that she had not expected anyone to know existed. The cascade has documented limits, she said. And when it exceeds them, it is not supposed to exceed them. And yet reports suggest it does, under extreme duress. Megan looked at him. Soleth saw a 17-year-old girl in a chair in his lab, and he saw something behind her eyes that was older than 17. Older than the Academy, older than the Union, something that had been built on a world that spent 4 billion years trying to kill everything on it, and had failed. Sometimes things break, Megan said. She left. Soleth watched the door close behind her. He went back to his journal. He did not add a new entry. He reread the one he had already written. They cornered the Deathworld girl after class. The security cameras exploded. Part 5. The message came at 2100 station time. Megan was at her desk, reading about territorial escalation in pack-hunting species when her terminal chimed. Not a message from an anonymous ID this time. From Tev, the young Grothian. He was not bothering to hide. Sub-level maintenance corridor C4. Come now, or we visit Counselor Cody's quarters instead. Megan read the message once. She did not read it twice. She closed her textbook, put on her shoes, picked up her bag with the torn strap she had not repaired, because repairing things required a kind of optimism she had not yet located. She walked out of her quarters, and she walked to the nearest access stairwell, and she went down. Sub-level maintenance was below the residential decks. Pipes, power conduits, storage. The lighting was industrial yellow, the kind that made everyone look sick. No cameras down here. The maintenance crews worked day cycle only. At 2100, it was empty. Megan knew it was empty. She had checked the schedules. She had checked them 3 weeks ago, the day after the anonymous message appeared on her terminal. Because Megan Hale did not wait to be ambushed twice. She had studied the sub-level layout. She had memorized the corridor junctions, the door codes she did not have, the service hatches and ventilation access points. She had done this the same way she had memorized the camera specs on her first week. Not because she planned to use the information, because information was the only thing that had ever kept her alive. She walked through a service junction and into corridor C4. It was long and narrow, and it smelled like recycled air and industrial lubricant. 6 of them were waiting. Ren Vashari stood at the center, veins glowing a steady deep indigo, confident. Behind him, Pex and Nile, the Delvari twins, flanking wide as always. To his right, Chadrick. His jaw had healed. The scales where Megan's elbow had cracked them were a slightly different shade now, lighter, like a scar that had not faded all the way. Next to Chadrick, Tev, small for a Grothian, eager in the way that young members of a pack are eager when they are trying to prove they belong. And one more. A Torvathi student Megan had seen in the corridors but never spoken to. Tall. Quiet. There because Ren had asked, and refusing Ren was not something people in his circle did. 6. Teb sealed the door behind Megan. She heard the lock engage. A code-sealed door. She did not have the code. No cameras, no exits, no witnesses. No 14-second gap in a recording to argue about in a dean's office. This was the plan. This was what Ren's family name bought. Not the violence itself, the architecture around it. The sealed door, and the empty corridor, and the certainty that whatever happened down here would not generate a formal investigation, because the people who generated formal investigations had already been spoken to by the people who funded buildings. Megan walked to the center of the corridor. She set her bag on the floor. She stood with her hands at her sides, and her feet shoulder-width apart, and her weight centered. She was not scanning exits. There were none. She was not counting opponents. She already knew the count. She was calm. Not performed calm. Not the fake stillness she used in classrooms to make herself small and invisible. Not the controlled breathing she used to manage the old engine behind her eyes. This was something else. Something on the other side of a decision she had made 3 weeks ago, the day the anonymous message appeared, the day she started taking notes on predator behavior. She had stopped running. The difference between a cornered animal and an apex predator is not size or strength or speed. It is the moment the animal stops trying to escape and starts deciding what happens next. Megan had crossed that line somewhere between the textbook and the terminal, and the 3 weeks of empty tables and spit on floors, and the slow, grinding isolation that was supposed to break her, because breaking had always worked before, on other students, on other targets, on other things that were smaller and softer and alone. Megan was smaller. She was alone. She was not softer. Ren spoke, the same voice, the same polish. You were given a chance, Megan. You chose not to take it. I chose a lot of things, Megan said. Coming down here was one of them. Ren tilted his head. His veins flickered, a micropulse of something he did not expect. She had come willingly. She was standing in the center of the room, with no exits and no weapons and no help. And she was not afraid. He did not know what to do with that. He gave the signal, a small gesture, 1 hand, 2 fingers, the Torvathi command for engage. Chadrick moved first. He was the fastest and the angriest, and his jaw still ached when the air pressure changed. Megan shifted. Her feet moved 2 inches. Her center of gravity dropped. Chadrick reached her, and she was not where he expected, and her palm hit his chest plate, and he was going backward, not falling, flying, the kind of backward that happened when 58 kilograms pushed with a force that had no business living in a frame that size. He hit the wall dented. The 6th student, the quiet Torvathi, lunged from the right. Megan turned into him, caught his arm, used his reach against him the way a lever uses length, and put him into Chadrick. Both went down. Tev came from behind, young, fast, desperate to prove himself. He grabbed Megan with both arms, wrapped them around her midsection, lifted. Her feet left the floor. A hand from behind, pinning her arms, holding her still, her weight off the ground, and someone else's body pressing against her back, and she could not move. Megan's vision went white at the edges, not from pain, from a door opening inside her head that she kept locked, a door with a room behind it that she never entered, a room in Gary where someone had held her from behind, and she could not move, and the door was locked, and the sound she made was not loud enough. The corridor shook. Not a metaphor. The composite panels in the walls vibrated. A pipe above the ceiling rattled in its housing, a deep metallic hum that climbed in pitch. The overhead light, industrial yellow, caged in wire, flickered once, twice, then it blew. A sharp crack, like a bone breaking. Glass fell. Then the next light. Then the next. Each one bursting in sequence down the length of the corridor, a chain of small explosions that left darkness behind them. In the dark, Tev let go. Not because he chose to, because every muscle in his forearms seized at once, a full body clench that was not his, that came from outside him, from the air itself, from a pressure that had no visible source, and no name in any language he spoke. His hands opened. His arms dropped. He staggered back. Megan dropped to her feet. In the dark, 6 bioluminescent Torvathi veins glowed pale and shaking. Ren, the quiet student. Pex and Neol, their gray skin almost invisible in the blackness, only their wide eyes catching the faint glow. Tev 3 meters back, staring at his own hands, like they belonged to someone else. And in the center of the corridor, Megan Hale. Her eyes had adjusted. Humans adapted to darkness faster than any species in the hallway. 4 billion years of nocturnal predators had built that reflex. She could see them. They could not see her. They could only see veins and eyes and the faint shape of a girl who was not moving. The corridor was silent, except for the settling of broken glass and the hum of a pipe that was still vibrating. "I am going to walk to that door," Megan said. Her voice was even, flat, not angry. Anger was the thing they could have understood. Anger was familiar. This was not anger. "One of you is going to open it, and then I am going to walk to my quarters and finish my xenobiology assignment. And tomorrow I will be in class, and the day after that, and the day after that." The pause was the length of a held breath. "And if any of you ever touch me again, I will not break a camera." The silence held. 5 seconds. 10. Long enough to feel permanent. Then footsteps. Pex, the quieter twin. He walked to the door in the dark. His hands were shaking so badly he entered the code wrong twice. The third time the lock disengaged. The door opened. Light from the stairwell spilled in, yellow and industrial and bright after the blackness. And in that light 6 aliens looked at a human girl and saw something they had no cultural framework for, no evolutionary reference point for, no word for in any of their languages. What they saw was not a victim, not an animal, not a Deathworld specimen. What they saw was what 4 billion years of pressure builds, when it builds all the way. Megan picked up her bag. The strap was still torn. She walked through the door, and she did not look back, and she climbed the stairs, and the station hummed around her, and her footsteps were steady, one after another, the sound of someone who was going home. Her quarters, her bunk, her small, clean room. She sat down. She held her hands in her lap, opened them, closed them. The glass on her desk, a cup of water she had poured before she left, was cracked. A thin line running from the rim to the base. She did not remember touching it. Her terminal chimed. A message from Lynn Cody. 2 words. "You okay?" Megan stared at the message. She breathed in, breathed out. She typed, "Yeah." Deleted it. Typed, "No." Deleted it. "Can you come over? I don't want to be alone right now." Her finger hovered over the send button. 3 seconds. The longest 5 seconds of a night that had already contained the longest 90 seconds. She sent it. Then she sat in the silence and waited. The room was still. The cracked glass caught the light. Nothing moved, nothing shook, nothing broke. 4 minutes later, a knock on the door. Soft, 1 knuckle, not demanding, asking. Megan opened the door. Lynn Cody stood in the corridor with 2 cups of something hot, and a face that did not ask questions. "Brought tea," Lynn said. "The good kind. Smuggled it from Earth on the supply transport." Megan stepped aside. Lynn walked in, sat on the floor, because the room had 1 chair, and it was covered in textbooks. Handed Megan a cup. They sat. They drank tea. They did not talk about hallways or cameras or locked doors or the things that happen in dark rooms. They sat in a small, clean room on a space station at the edge of Union territory. And they drank tea, and the silence between them was not empty. It was full. Full of the thing that happens when someone who has been alone for a very long time lets another person sit beside them without requiring them to be anything other than there. Megan held the cup in both hands. The warmth moved through her palms and into her fingers, and for the first time in 3 weeks, in 3 years, in longer than she had a number for, her hands were still. Not because she was making them still, because they were. Outside, the station turned. The stars moved. Somewhere, on sub-level maintenance corridor C4, a young Grothian named Tev sat against a wall in the dark, and opened and closed his hands, and did not understand what had happened to him. He would not understand for a long time. But Megan Hale sat on her bunk with a cup of earth tea, and a woman who knew what locked doors sounded like, and she did not need him to understand. She did not need any of them to understand. She just needed to not be alone. And for tonight, she was not. They cornered the Deathworld girl after class. The security cameras exploded. Part 1. The lecture hall smelled like ozone and something floral that Megan Hale could not name. Some alien cleaning chemical. It burned the inside of her nose if she breathed too deep, so she breathed shallow and kept her eyes on the desk. Instructor Soleth stood at the front of the room, all 4 arms moving in different directions while he spoke. He was Ketharai, tall, mantis-like. His head tilted at angles that made it look like he was always asking a question, even when he was giving answers. Today the topic was apex predator adaptation across Class 7 and above planetary ecosystems. Megan knew the material cold. She had read the chapter twice and the supplementary sources 3 times. She did not raise her hand. She never raised her hand. Raising your hand meant people looked at you. People looking at you meant they remembered you. People remembering you had never once, in 17 years of Megan's life, worked out in her favor. So she sat in the back row, 3rd seat from the left, close enough to the door that she could reach it in 4 steps if she stood up fast, far enough from the professor that she would not be called on by accident. She had picked this seat on the first day, and had not moved since. Around her, the lecture hall was filled with students from 11 different species. Most of them were taller than her. All of them were from worlds the Galactic Union classified as Category 3 or below. Gentle worlds. Worlds with stable weather and predictable seasons, and oceans that did not try to eat you. Earth was a Category 9. There were only 10 categories. Category 10 was listed as theoretically survivable, and no known species had ever emerged from one. Earth sat 1 step below the impossible, and the fact that it had produced a spacefaring civilization was considered by most Union academics to be either a miracle or a clerical error. Megan was one of 3 humans on the station. The other 2 were postgraduates, older. They kept to themselves. One of them, a woman named Lynn Cody, had nodded at Megan once in the dining hall. That was the full extent of human social life on Oreth 4. The lecture ended. Students filed out in clusters, talking in languages Megan's translator chip rendered into flat English with no slang and no warmth. She packed her bag, slow, let the crowd thin, watched the door until the bottleneck cleared, then walked through it. The dining hall was 3 levels down and 2 corridors east. Megan walked the route she had memorized on her 2nd day. She did not take shortcuts through unfamiliar sections. She kept her back away from open junctions, and she cataloged every camera she passed, a small habit from a different life that she had never bothered to unlearn. 14 cameras between the lecture hall and the dining hall. She knew each one by position, angle, and model number. She had looked up the specs on her terminal during her first week. Recording buffer, 45 seconds local, continuous stream to central security. Casing, standard composite, rated for low-impact environments. Lens, wide-angle, 220-degree sweep. She did not know why she had memorized this. The same way she did not know why she always sat with her back to a wall, or why she could tell from the sound of footsteps whether someone behind her was speeding up. These were not choices. They were architecture, built in rooms she did not think about anymore, on a planet 4,000 light-years behind her. The dining hall was half full. The food was nutrient-balanced and species-appropriate, which meant it tasted like someone had described human food to a computer, and the computer had tried its best. She sat at a table in the corner, back to the wall, sightline to both exits. She ate alone, not with sadness, with efficiency. 16 minutes, tray cleared, recycled, gone. On her way out she passed a table of Torvathi students, 4 of them. The one at the center was Ren Vashari, tall even by Torvathi standards, which meant he towered over Megan like a lamppost over a fire hydrant. His skin was pale, almost white, and beneath it ran veins that glowed faint blue, pulsing with bioluminescence that shifted color with his mood. Right now they pulsed a steady, cold violet. He was looking at her. Megan did not look back. She knew he was looking the same way she knew where the cameras were. Peripheral vision. The way a room got half a degree quieter when someone important decided to pay attention to someone who was not. She kept walking. The afternoon passed. Xenochemistry lab. Applied gravitational theory. A free study period she spent in her quarters, reading ahead in the textbook, because the library had too many open sightlines and not enough walls. Her terminal chimed at 1600 station time. A message from the medical wing. Dr. Ullith wanted to see her. She went. Dr. Ullith was Delvari. Small, gray-skinned, 6 fingers on each hand, and perpetually nervous in a way that seemed baked into his species rather than his personality. He sat behind his desk and pulled up her file and stared at it the way someone stares at a traffic accident they have already driven past 3 times but cannot stop circling back to. Your bone density results from last month, he said. I ran them again. Okay. They are the same. Okay. Megan, your skeletal structure is denser than Torvathi combat armor. Your muscle fiber density is 3.2 times the galactic median for bipedal species. Your immune system shows antibody markers for a pathogen that is used as a Class 2 bioweapon on 2 Union worlds. He paused. His 6 fingers tapped the desk in a pattern that had no rhythm. What was it? The flu, Megan said. Dr. Ullith blinked all 3 of his eyes at once. The flu. Yeah, I was 8. Missed a week of school. He did not laugh. He looked at her the way Instructor Solith looked at diagrams of animals that should not exist, but did. Megan left the medical wing. It was 17:30. The station corridors were thinning as the day cycle wound down and students moved toward their quarters or the recreation levels. Megan took her usual route. Corridor 6, Junction 11, left turn. Hallway 9, long, narrow, low traffic at this hour. 1 camera overhead, mounted at the midpoint, 40 meters to her door. She was 12 meters in when the footsteps started behind her. Not 1 set, 4. She did not turn around. She did not speed up. She logged the rhythm, the weight, the spacing. 2 heavy, Torvathi. 1 light and fast, Delvari. 1 grinding, like someone was dragging gravel under their shoes, Grothian. They came out of the junction ahead of her. Ren Vashari, the Delvari twins, Pex and Neol, flanking wide, and behind her, blocking the way she had come, Chadrick, Grothian, compact and scaled, with a mouth that held too many teeth, and eyes that reflected the corridor lights like wet stones. 4 of them, arranged in a formation that was not casual. Megan stopped. Her bag hung from her right shoulder. Her feet were shoulder-width apart. Her weight was centered. Exits. 2, both blocked. Camera 1 directly overhead. Distance to her quarters, 40 meters. Distance to Ren, 3. Ren smiled. Torvathi smiles were not like human smiles. They were wider, and they showed no teeth, and they meant something closer to, I have decided what to do with you. Megan Hale, he said. His voice was smooth and practiced and polite. The politeness was the part that made her skin go cold. She had heard polite before. Polite was what people used when they already knew how this ended, and wanted to feel good about it. I think it is time we talked about your place here. Megan said nothing. Her eyes moved to the camera overhead. Small, spherical, standard Union security model. Ren stepped closer. 3 meters became 2.